SPSN.
Welcome into the Scene Project Sports Network. I am your host, Bubba Starts, and we have a really exciting interview for you guys today. I'm bringing in neural coach and trainer Brandon Day. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Hey, Bubba. Thanks for having me, man.
Hey, it's my pleasure. We don't do a ton of interviews over here on this network. A lot of what we do is just sports coverage. But because you work with athletes and you work in that space, I thought that this was a little bit better fit for the conversation that we're going to have today. So before we get into, too much about what you're doing now, I'd love to know a little bit about your history. I know you're rocking the 406 shirt today. So shout out to a fellow Midwesterner. I know you're from Montana, but give us a little bit of the backstory.
Yeah. So like you said, I'm from Montana, the 406. Shout out to Papu and his company. I'm always repping their stuff as much as I can. But yeah, I grew up in Montana and played sports all my life. I ended up playing football at a small college in Montana in Helena, where I'm from, called Carroll College. Had a great run there. I played in 3 national championships in the NAIA. We won 2 of them. I was an All-American, captain of the team, and I ended up on the cover of Sports Illustrated in 2007 when we played against your boys down there in Sioux Falls. It was a muddy game. There was a photographer there that was from the Associated Press. He snapped this picture at the end of the game of me sliding through the mud and doing this like celebratory pose. And it got picked up by Sports Illustrated. And it was a wild story that we can certainly go into if you want. But
we're going to touch on that one.
The short version is it really highlighted a lot of my insecurities and self-worth issues. And so the substance abuse issues and the ways that I would self-medicate and hide from the spotlight just amplified a lot. So then I went into independent film because that's a pretty easy transition for somebody with substance abuse and insecurity issues. Ended up in LA and kind of hit rock bottom. And I was in so much chronic physical pain and mental and emotional pain. The substance abuse was not helping. And I hit rock bottom and I had to make a change. So I decided in that moment, when I was very near the brink, that things needed to be different. And so from then, for the last 15 years, I've been trying to heal my body and heal my brain, because I knew all those hits to the head probably weren't helping things. And so it was a long journey: spiritual, physical, emotional, mental, everything. And people that know me, this is no surprise, I'm kind of a rebel of sorts, and the traditional ways of going about things don't really jive with me too much. So I had to find my own way. And that led me down lots of different paths of education, some formal, so a lot of informal. And through my experience and these kind of off the beaten path education methods and things, I found my way and eventually landed in this world of applied neurology. And that's what really changed the game for me. That and the idea of flow states and the neurobiology of what's going on in your brain when you're in a flow state. And for those that aren't familiar with a flow state, it's when you're in the zone, when you feel you are performing at your peak. So much so, you're so involved in the moment, in the task at hand, that everything else fades away. Time goes away. Your sense of self goes away. It's the most enjoyable and our most intense focus and peak performance state that we can find. And so when I finally understood that, and that's what I had lost after sports, I made my life about finding that again and making that the goal. And as I tell all my clients, like, when you make flow the goal, everything else takes care of itself. The outcomes, they just take care of themselves. Like, you're focusing on the process. You're focusing on being present in the moment. So from like the mental mindset side of things, that's my jam. Right? I love flow states and I love chasing flow in everything that we do. And that's what I coach people on. And then on the physical, you know, and then brain optimization side, there's the neuro training, which was what really unlocked my chronic physical pain. Like I'm talking like instantly 15 years of pain gone. So no surprise that I'm like, okay, I'm going head first into this, whatever this is. Let's just go. Let's see where this takes us. Cool thing about the brain is that you'll never reach the end. It's a universe inside of itself. So you can never learn it all. And I think that's awesome, right? You can always chase mastery in that one thing. So
man, I'm so glad that we matched on Pod Match. Shout out to Alex Sanfilippo. He has changed my life with this network that they've built, and for this, because I come from the artist world. I come from music. I grew up playing sports. You know, I didn't go on to play at any collegiate level, but you talk about the flow state, and that's on stage, right? And for a player where you're in the game and you get into that zone. And I felt that as a, you know, a high school, you know, athlete. But for me, it was always in music, and I had grown up playing and performing on stage. It's probably why I didn't pursue sports more, was because I had found music and found it easier to achieve that in this other area. But yeah, that high, that riding that high of that flow, which is exactly what leads a lot of artists and, you know, the physical pain of performing, the same as athletes, is that you kind of end up chasing that high. I myself have dealt with substance abuse issues. My substance abuse and bad decisions landed me in prison for a couple of years, right? And I didn't murder anyone. I sold a lot of weed, right? Which was also, you know, not a great decision, but also now not the social stigma that it was 10 years ago when I caught my charges. We're talking about descheduling, and now it seems kind of, well, I was like one of the last people that did hard time for marijuana, but I digress. Talking about just everything you're hitting on there has so many relations outside of the sports world. And you talked about how you help corporate clients and corporate athletes, I think you called them, because they are using, while they're not maybe physically using a lot of those muscles, they're using their brains at a much higher level and securing these big deals and writing the deals. I mean, I can't imagine, and I hope I get there. We're talking about some pretty massive sponsorships with our company right now, a big tour we're planning, but like the thrill of landing a multi-million-dollar deal, right? Because you were in the zone for that presentation and you nailed it. And then, you know, walking out of there and being like, we're going to celebrate. Let's all go get drinks at the bar. Right. And for some people, you're riding that high for a long time. And before you know it, you know, you've built a habit out of that celebration, even when you have nothing to celebrate. And so there are so many things in your backstory that are just like, man, even though I never attained that at any kind of collegiate sport level, I have been there on like the artist side. I've played in front of thousands of people. I have performed in those moments and have been there. And the brain, the chemistry of it is exactly the same.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I call my corporate clients and my entrepreneurs corporate athletes. And that's why I work with artists and musicians, and I call them athletes too, because they are. We're playing different sports, quote unquote, but it's all the same. And that's flow states. That's what underpins it all, right? And so when you treat it all like that, and if that becomes the goal, then you can train anyone to achieve that. The context is a little different. The technical skills are a little different. My transition out of sports, what actually got me really back to that place was music. I play guitar and sing as well. And so that, I mean, it took a while. It's a hill to climb, right? To learn any instrument.
You think it's hard to learn a sport? Try picking up an instrument.
Yeah.
Because you don't just look bad, you sound bad too.
Oh man, it's terrible. I spent 7 years in a dark room before
I learned when I was like 12, 13 years old, and I picked it up quickly. Happened to come from a musical family, so I had some advantages, right? But yeah, I mean, I know people that have learned in their 20s, and that I know people in their 40s that are pretty good performers, but have that mental block where they're like, oh, I would never perform in front of people. Like I can't do that. And you're like, well, you could, but you have this mental block that you can't get past.
That's where I come in as a coach, right?
Well, now I have someone to refer them to when I hear that.
Well, and the short answer is, for anybody out there that's listening and is in that position, is you got to, for flow states, and this is like, no matter what the sport, the skill, anything, no matter what it is, flow sits in the perfect balance between challenge and skills, where you are challenging yourself just a little bit outside of your current skill level. If the challenge gets too high, and this is perceived challenge, by the way, right? Performing in front of, I just performed in front of a full bar, like a few hundred people, at my mom's 60th birthday. This is my first performance ever in front of like an actual crowd. But I had performed in front of the family at parties. You know, I'll pull it out at a campfire or at a pool party, and we'll just sing some songs together. And I could do the bigger performance because I had done the earlier ones, the easier ones. I felt a little bit more confident because I had done those. So my skill level was getting better. You know what I mean? So that's all I'm saying. Like, was it hard? Yes. I was shitting my pants. Sorry for
You're good, man.
The language, but
yeah.
I literally had to go sit in the car and do like my little vocal warm up, and I like hyperventilate for a while because it was so scary to me in that moment. But that is what life is all about. That's why we play sports. That's why we perform. It's for that. Because when you go through the fear and you approach and you tackle that challenge, the outcome actually doesn't matter. Like, you can bomb or you can do well. Like, I don't even remember most of it, right?
But afterwards, right?
Yeah, you kind of do. But you feel so good for taking on that challenge afterward. You've been in the flow state, and then you get the euphoria that comes afterward. That's really why you do it, right? All of the other things that come after that, right? That's like, you're sitting in that afterglow and you want to have fun and you want to celebrate. That can be its own thing, right? But why we do it is for that state of consciousness. It's literally an altered state of consciousness. Your brain totally changes. And this part of your brain up here, the frontal lobe, which is where our self-referential thinking is, where our inner critic lives, our self-doubt, our second guessing, all of that just shuts up and goes completely quiet. That part of your brain literally shuts down, and you just start acting on instinct, right? That's why when you improvise, you can do things that you're like, I've never done that before. That was insane. It was so good, right? You do that because this brain shuts down, and you go on your skill and your instinct, and you're making these connections in your brain that you don't have the ability to make when this thing in the front here is running the show. So it literally changes everything about your brain and allows you to access these parts of your brain that you don't normally have access to. So like big creative breakthroughs, huge problem-solving breakthroughs happen in a flow state. Einstein was well known for going, when he would have a really intense problem, leaving when he would be at his like most intense point of frustration, and he would go out on the little Lake Geneva, or whatever it's called there at Princeton, and take his little sailboat out there and just go sailing. Fun fact, he's not a sailor. He didn't even know how to sail. So he would get stuck out there more often than not. But it would take that, you could call it a distraction. Really, it's like in the flow cycle, we call it the release phase. There's a great book called The Breakout Principle that talks all about this. Like, you go through this struggle phase at the start of any task, and then when you release and let it go, you let that brain just like turn off. totally forget about the problem, and then you'll have this boom moment of insight. They call that the paradox of inspiration. That's why you have these ideas in the shower or when you're just about to fall asleep. You have the best idea for a song ever. You got to write it down because it's going to be gone, right? Well, in the case of problem solving, or in the case of a game or in a performance, when you drop in through that release phase and you let go, these chemicals like flush your system of all the stress, right? This is why calling extreme sport or adventure sport athletes adrenaline junkies is not correct, because adrenaline is not fun. Like when you're highly adrenalized, like I was sitting in that car before that performance, like I'm hyperventilating, I'm freaking out. That perceived challenge is like too high at that moment, and I'm in like anxious. But when I like focus on my warm up and my breathing, bring myself back down and approach that challenge for what it is, it's just a challenge, and I'm getting more excited about it, then those stress chemicals start to release. And once you're on stage, at least for me, like once you got on stage and you got through the first song and you realize that nobody's like throwing things at you and there are people actually singing along, and they're like, oh, okay, they're kind of enjoying this. All right, this is kind of fun. And then you drop into that flow state and then you just let go. And that's where you really start to, connect with your instrument, connect with your voice, and connect with the crowd. Like that's some magical shit there.
Yeah.
Like that connection with the crowd, which
God, you went down the rabbit hole with this stuff, didn't you?
I'm deep down the rabbit hole with all this.
Cool, man. Seeing athletes get a rap of being dumb jocks. Look at you. Look at you.
Yeah. Breaking all sorts of molds.
You know what? I've performed for so long in my life that like almost being on stage and playing music like doesn't do that for me. Like I get into the flow in that so easily. I just like it's natural. So I don't have that, like the gratification of it didn't reach. And that's probably why I picked up podcasting and it kind of took over in that. So I quit my welding job in 2024. I thought I was going to be a rock star. Right. And I had these gigs booked. We had these big, amphitheater shows. We were opening for Armchair Boogie, Wisconsin kind of newgrass band. Right. And that was going to be the biggest one of the summer. And then like that next, I think later that day, I think I played the show on a Friday, and then I went up and played Saturday, Sunday in Minneapolis, 2 shows I had never done before, because I didn't want to be like to get too big for my britches. Right. So it was immediately going from like the pinnacle of the stages I can play in South Dakota. There's like one stage that's bigger, the Denny Sanford Premier Center, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And I've worked in there, right? I have done some work with the podcast and stuff in there already. So it was like, that doesn't like, it takes a massive move in my career for me to get that opportunity. So I was kind of at the upper echelon of what I could achieve in my music career. It was important for me to like go out and play to an empty room. And I did. That Sunday, I played on a rooftop in Minneapolis, the Lynn Lake Brewery, now closed, which is a shame. Really cool bar. There was nobody there. It was my wife and my kids. Right. And I needed that to stay humble. And I booked it that way. Right. Like nobody sent me out on that. I did it on purpose because I knew mentally is like, if you make that the pinnacle and you think that that's the way that it's going to be, you're going to totally screw yourself for the rest of your career. And, from that summer, it got to the end of the summer where I was like, I don't have the passion for this that I thought I did. Like to make it, I was going to have to play 5-6 nights a week, playing these bar shows and doing all these things. And it was fun, but it was so taxing, right? Like physically exhausting every single day. And I was like, I don't want to live my life in this like perpetual tiredness. I'm an early riser. I'm up with the sun. I get my walk in, I get my physical, like I like to get that brain moving. And just being up until 2 a.m. and sleeping till 10 or 11. I was just like, this doesn't fit the lifestyle that I really enjoy living. I like to be up kind of before the sun and working and getting, that time in when the world is quiet. And podcasting was already part of my life at that point. And it really, I really started to invest a lot more time into it. So kind of came off the road, after the summer, fall tours were kind of over. and really started dedicating myself to the podcasting. And in that time, I was very blessed to cover the Cinch Playoffs Governor's Cup at the Denny
Mm.
Sanford, and got to interview Rocker Steiner, who is the now world champion bareback rider. And I interviewed him at that point. He had just become the world number one, money earned. And
Nice.
interviewing him then, and then interviewing him again this year when we got the opportunity to cover it. And he's been number one ever since, more money than anybody's ever earned in the sport, at
Wow.
least in his division. And he's been on this ride. They're releasing a TV show about him on the Cowboy Channel. And then to meet him again this year and to see where he was, because he's a young man, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, very
Wow.
young kid, right?
Yeah.
At the top of his game, comes from a family of champions. Mom was a world champion, dad was a world champion, grandpa was a world champion, like somebody that not only did it at a high level himself, but grew up around people that had done it at a high level. And getting to have a conversation with him this year, working a PGA Tour event this year where I got to interview Chris Carter and Rondé Barber and Sir Nick Faldo, the world number one golfer for 96 weeks in a row. And, you know, Rondé and Chris, both Hall of Famers, Rondé, a Super Bowl champion. Brother, I was sweating, right? Like my pits were drenched from just being in the room with these high caliber, you know, people and being in a new space, right? I wasn't playing music now. I was in the press conference side, and really nobody else in the media was asking a lot of questions. So it really came on to me, you know, like having to drive some of this conversation. And that 45-minute presser and those nerves, and like, man, instantly became a junkie for that again. It was like, I love this. I love that feeling, but it was getting in that flow state. And I'm so glad that like I had one camera facing at me and one camera facing at them. And there's a point in there where, you know, Rondé's talking directly to me, and it's a small press conference, man. You're talking about less than maybe 15 people in the room, right? And you're 15 feet away from, I mean, like league MVPs, right? Like the freaking man, right? At the top of his level on the biggest platforms in the world, and just incredible experience in that. And the neural pathways that I had walked in music had served me so well to be in that room with those gentlemen. And at one point, I think I referred to the Open as one of the other majors, and having Sir Nick Faldo be like, the other? This is a night, right? A literal night ribbing me. My wife loves it, by the way, right? She's like, they're making fun of you. I'm like, yeah, honestly, he's knighted. So what am I going to do? But just being able to laugh about it and all of that stage experience coming in handy, you know, fast forward another 2 months from there, I did 150 interviews on the red carpet at the Grand Ole Opry House, and 150 independent artists who I vibe with, right? They're me. I have that, but working on these massive stages is just like that whole music career was only preparation for this broadcasting career, right? And all of those neural pathways that I built being on stage and performing in that essence prepared me for that. And in some way, the sports that I played as a kid had prepared me for the time on the stage, and just the way that everything, and to hear you now kind of talk about the technical side of that, right? Like the neuroplasticity and all of these things that you built, and that it's no different. All these different stages, all these different pathways. And in some ways, like your athletic career prepared you for being on the stage as a musician, right? A good
100%.
friend of mine, Riley Weslowski, played for the Rapid City Rush, but he also played music and was mostly, you know, campfire strummer. But him and his brother started playing out around Rapid City and stuff, and you know, having conversations about him about the similarities, right, between the two stages in life and how you both lock in. To have you iterate that now on this show is really just like a huge full circle moment for me. So I appreciate everything here. Can you talk more about like the, you know, obviously it was your rock bottom that pushed you into the neural, but like what keeps you going in that? Is it seeing other people kind of have these realizations and helping them along that journey now that kind of inspires you to keep going?
In a word, yes. It's also still, I sometimes say it's such a selfish pursuit, because it still is, a lot of it's about me, and being the best version of myself. And I still have a lot to work on. I've kind of come out of the fog of chronic pain and the mental health and the substance abuse. This I'll be celebrating 10 years without alcohol this year, which was a huge turning point for me.
Yeah,
Um,
good for you. It's the easiest one, right? It's so readily accessible and so
oh yeah, it's
socially
everywhere.
accepted that
Well,
it's the hardest
especially
one to kick.
especially in the Midwest or the
Oh
Northwest, like
yeah.
Montana, the Dakotas. It gets cold out there. You're stuck inside. Alcohol is a big part of the culture, and I didn't fully understand that until I moved away and got to Southern California and then over to Arizona here where I live now. Started running in some other groups, and I'm like, you mean that booze is
You
not
don't drink every night?
every at every occasion? And yeah, so I did quit that, and that was huge for me. But um, coming out of that fog of all of that was just kind of the start of the journey. Like getting out of chronic pain is great, but that is not the end point, right? Every single client that comes to me in pain, we have a conversation day one. It's like, okay, you got this pain. That's obviously your goal is to get out of pain, right? But I need you to pick something bigger and better for yourself that you want to do when you're done with this pain. You need something else to strive for, because too many times people will get out of pain and they'll come out of that fog and they'll be like, oh my God, thank you. Like, finally. And then they stop doing their drills. Then they stop striving for something and they get complacent. You're always going to come back to that pain, right? It's right there waiting for you if you don't continue to move forward. So, um, for me, um, understanding what flow states are and how that's such a huge part of, I think, in my opinion, it's everything. It's what we're seeking in all of the things that we do. It gives our life meaning, right? In many ways. Like you found it in music and then it got a little stagnant. And so you flip that, you switch to podcasting and interviewing people and you started to find that spark again, right? Could you find that in music still? Hell yeah, you could. But you got to tweak it a little bit. You got to tweak the challenge. And so it starts to challenge you again, right? In some way, if you wanted to, right?
Yeah,
But
that's
that's
the
that's the thing.
ADHD, right? Whereas like
Yeah.
I'm playing, I'm singing, I got my pedal board in front of me, I'm running sound from the stage, I'm running the lights from the stage, like I
Yeah.
literally am on, I could not be doing more physically than I am right now. And then you're like, this isn't enough. I need something else. Like,
Well, and so the other part of that is you have to be really in touch with why you're doing anything. You know what I mean? Like, if the reason that I played sports was for the adoration, was for the applause, um, then eventually you reach a pinnacle and it's just like, well, okay, now what? Right? That's extrinsic motivation from outside of yourself. And that always reaches a limit to where it's no longer motivating. Money is the classic example. It's very good motivator if you don't have any. If you are struggling to pay rent and pay your bills and you're living paycheck to paycheck, it sucks. Like, I've been there. It's not fun. It's very motivating to get out of that and to get to a place where you have enough money to cover everything. But once you get to a certain point, and I don't know what it is now, 10, 15 years ago, it was like $75,000 a year. Once you hit that point, you got everything covered, all your survival needs, food, shelter, whatever. Your happiness doesn't increase anymore. It levels out. So you got to find something else. So that's where extrinsic rewards no longer serve us to keep us motivated and keep us driven. So we got to leverage our innate biology and we got to find intrinsic driven rewards. These are things like mastery. And when you're chasing mastery of a craft, then all of the extrinsic stuff doesn't matter. Right? John Mayer comes to mind here. a lot of people, a lot of my friends, macho guys, are like John Mayer, because all they've heard is daughters and like your body is a wonderland. But I'm like, bro, you need to go listen to his like catalog, his blues stuff. Like he's a wizard on a guitar, and he has played so many different styles of music, and he changes himself up all the time because he is continually chasing mastery. Yeah, he's written some huge pop hits.
Not for a long time now, but
Not for a long time because he
because
kind
he's
of did
chasing
that thing,
mastery. Yeah.
but he
And playing with
continues
Dead and
going.
Company.
Yeah. Why is he playing with the Dead? He doesn't need to do that. He's touring all over the world with the Dead. Like, there's no notoriety there. There's no big, I mean, he's probably getting a decent paycheck, but that doesn't matter to him. You know what I mean? He's doing it because I've never actually been to a Grateful Dead show, so I can't actually say from experience.
I have.
But I know.
Yeah, tattooed on my arm. I'm a huge Deadhead. I know why he's
Awesome.
chasing it, right? Like as a
Yes.
musician, I know because I've been in love with that music forever.
Yes.
And everything that it meant. And I thought it
Yes.
was thrilling because I had listened to he released a couple of albums around the time I was in prison, and I really dug into those. The name of the songs, evading me now, but I remember the words all the time. And It's Just the Wave is one of them.
Yeah,
And
that album is my favorite album.
Great song, man. That whole album is incredible. Just
Emoji of a Wave, I think, is the actual
Emoji of a
title
Wave.
that
Yes.
track.
Yeah. And
One
I
of my
think that
favorite
explains
tracks.
flow state, right? I mean, that's kind of what it's
Yes.
alluding to is like, you're not necessarily in control of it, but there's things you can do to get yourself there.
Yep.
But there's always like, there's a risk, right? So you have to get in the pool
Yes.
to ever achieve flow state. And would you say that like the mental block to that is like people standing at the edge of a diving board, right? And they're like, I can't. When you're literally one step away from doing it, it's right there, and you just can't take that step.
That's the perfect analogy, Bubba, because we talked very briefly about this flow cycle. And flow is not a binary thing. It doesn't turn on or off. It always goes through a cycle. And those stages are struggle, release that we talked about with Einstein and letting it go, then flow. And then after you're done with the flow state, which is very demanding on your energy and your brain, you recover. You have to recover. So it always happens in this cycle. Now, what you're talking about is the struggle phase. And this is where most people fail. And why they don't have flow in their life is because they don't know how to struggle and struggle well and get through the struggle. When I was talking about that frustration earlier, that's part of it. Like you're working on a problem and you're like, your brain is like starting to increase the arousal and the stress chemicals, and you're starting to like get so frustrated. That's a good sign. That means your brain is working hard and it's gathering all the information it can and it's holding all in your working memory. And then you release it and let your brain go to work. Let the subconscious go to work, find the connections. It will solve the problem for you. Okay. That's like problem solving. Now, when we talk about performance or a sport, and this is where action adventure sport athletes have been killing it in the game of flow for a long time because they understand the struggle phase. Take the diving board example. Yes, most people, they want to get there. They know on the other side it's flow, but it's scary. Now, they did some research on this at the Flow Research Collective, and the title of the paper was something about like the first 2 seconds of flow or something, like what's happening in the brain. And what they found was that in your brain, you have this area that has to choose whether the fight or flight response. Like you're backed into a corner, people are coming at you, they want your money or to hurt your family, you're gonna fight, right? It's an instinct we all have to fight or flee. This is required for a flow state. You have to choose to fight. You have to get those chemicals, those stress chemicals, all the way to the max. And where most people fail is they distract or they flee or they go do something else. It's too scary. I'm walking away from the diving board. Okay, it's your choice, but you don't get flow now, right? So there is a certain amount of risk. And again, when we understand that, we can tune the dials up and down, tune that risk trigger based on what your tolerance for risk is. The 6-foot diving board might be more than enough for one of my, well, probably way too much for one of my triplets. I have 18-month-old triplets.
Oh
So
man.
yeah. So talk about challenge skills balance. Like, I think we're a little bit off there.
Thank God you've studied flow state.
No doubt. But
Just changing
sidebar,
diapers.
if you want to see flow state, just watch a kid. Watch a kid playing around. They're in flow all the time.
Yeah,
But
the
that's another
reason I landed
conversation.
on the diving board analogy, Brandon, was because I learned how to do backflips off a diving board at like 35 years old, right?
Nice.
And and I started with the front flip and I over rotated a couple times, smacked my face. The backflips,
Sure.
it took a while. They were ugly. My wife was always filming while they were ugly. As soon as I did one and prove I could do it repeatedly, the camera went down. She didn't care anymore. All the kids were like, "Oh, do a backflip," until I could do them regular. And they're like, whatever. It's not that cool, And so I started teaching my kids, like, hey, front flip, this is kind of how you do it. I understand the body mechanics of this now. And
Yeah.
obviously they were scared, right? Like they're so scared in that first time of running, the run up and then the stop, and then the run up and the stop. And I watched my 12 and just turned 13-year-old last summer go from scared to do a front flip at the beginning of the year to throwing gainers and double front flips off the low
Nice.
dive by the end of the summer, right?
Yeah.
And watch
It's a
him
progression.
challenge himself in that way, throwing
Yes.
gainers. Cause I was just always saying, hey man, try it. Just keep going. I can't get it. I can't do
Mhm.
it. I can't do it. I was like, the only thing stopping you from doing it is you saying that you can't do it, because you can
Yep.
do it. Right. And
Yeah.
watching him kind of learn that. And now he's like, cool, I can do it. Now you can do it. And I was like, no, I can't do it. My ass is too fat. I was like, the risk isn't there, right? I'm like, man, I'm almost 40. Judah is my boy. I'm like, look, brother, I dub the back flips. I've learned how to do, front flips. Now I've trained you guys, but like the risk reward isn't there for me to try and train myself to do a gainer. I'm not willing to go through,
That's the
because
thing.
I watched him smack his face how many times,
Yeah.
getting 3/4 of the way around that gainer, eating all this water up in his face. And I was like, I don't have that, right? Like I don't have the ability to go through that. I'm going to find other ways to challenge myself, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty happy getting to come up to the diving board. And when the kids who haven't seen me do it are like, do a backflip. And I'm like, poof,
Mhm.
having that was good enough for me. Right. But not
Yeah.
him. He kept pushing himself and kept pushing and
Right.
kept pushing. And it was really cool to watch it in over the course of like a month of just, nope, I'm going to the pool today. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. But
Awesome.
he had to take that first leap, right? He had to go out
Yeah.
there and fail that first time miserably, and that
Mhm.
10th time and that 80th time. But man, that 81st time, he got it. And it was like, dude, you did it. Right.
Yeah.
And now he's chasing
Such a good
that flow,
feeling.
man. Yeah, man. It was awesome. As a dad, I think that's been one of my like most gratifying moments, because
Mm.
it wasn't on me at all. Right. It was on, I encouraged him and I didn't train him how to do that. I had no idea. I'd seen little mechanical things that I was like, hey, try this, right? Like you're not tucking when you do this. You're like, you got to get a little more rotation, or just like, but I didn't do that. There was nothing I could
Sure.
do for him.
Yeah. Yeah, you're hitting on a lot of, so flow is pretty intuitive, right? Especially if you've gone through some kind of skill training process like you did with music, also with sports. That's why I love sports so much. But also many I might say physical artistic pursuits like learning an instrument. It's a progression, right? And the biggest my biggest pet peeve is people that are like, especially coaches and teachers, that are expecting kids or others to be somewhere that they aren't, right? Not meeting them where they're at and expecting like, oh, you should know all of these scales by the end of next week. It's like, that's too much challenge. We need to break the skill down more. And when you break any skill down, the analogy, I think it's like a Buddhist analogy, is like um, eating an elephant, is just one bite at a time or something like. And there's this story of this guy in France or somewhere that actually ate an entire airplane. Literally ate an airplane. So you take like one piece of metal and swallow it every day. And over time he did that. But the point is like you break skills down. And whatever, as hard as something may seem, if you can break it down into smaller chunks that will fit both the challenge and the skill level that you currently have. If your skill level is 0, then you start with the most basic thing. Learn to approach and then jump on a diving board. That's day 1. Like, do that. Nail that, and then go on to the next thing. Increase the challenge a little bit. And for risk, your son's risk tolerance is a lot higher because he's got a malleable, like smaller body that doesn't get injured as easily as your 35 or 40-year-old body, right? So like for me, yeah, I'm not going straight to a gainer off the diving board because I'm 220 pounds and like I've been through a full life at this point, maybe more than one lifetime that I've done to my body. So my risk tolerance is going to be lower to start. Can we reach the same point? Absolutely. But maybe my path is a little bit further. And maybe my risk tolerance just ends at a certain point. I noticed after I had kids, my tolerance for risk in a lot of things changed. Like taking financial risks changed big time. Taking physical risks. I used to be into skydiving. I did a little rodeo back in my day. A lot of the riskier sports, I don't do them anymore because it's not worth it to me anymore. Because now it's not about me. It's about way more than me as a father. So you got to know where your risk tolerance is. And this is where action adventure sports have been killing it because they play with that trigger a lot. Like standing on the edge of a black diamond on your skis or on your mountain bike, there's a big risk there. And like flow follows focus. You got to have intense focus. And when the risk is higher, you get focus for free. That's the saying. This is why public speaking is such a flow-rich activity in the cognitive realm, because the risk, the social risk or risk to your reputation is high, at least perceived, right? So that's why it's intense. It's challenging. You get more flow there. A lot of athletes go into motivational speaking, public speaking of some kind. Podcasting, same thing. Like there's a little bit of that risk there, So when you start to understand these different triggers, and depending on who you're talking to, there's anywhere from like 20 to 25 different triggers for individual flow. And then group flow is a different thing that's even more intense and impactful. So playing with a band, getting in touch with the crowd and connecting with the crowd, that elevates your experience way higher, right?
That's what John was chasing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because he had attained it at such a high level in a studio, because he could play all the instruments too, right? He could do that.
Oh yeah.
He got really good in that studio doing it. And then the chase became, well, how do you create that on this massive scale and connect with the crowd and connect with the band, and to do that, like that's what he was chasing. Brandon, I've kept you long enough today. We could talk daily, I think, and still hit on stuff in this. I think it's incredible, but obviously you got triplets at home and your time is extremely valuable to you. Share where everyone can find you before I let you go. And I'll make sure that we send anyone who needs this. Obviously, we touch so many artists and athletes now with the Scene Project Sports Network as well, that would definitely be interested in what you have to say and some of these services. So go ahead and plug away, man. And thanks for taking some time for me today. This was brilliant.
Yeah, no, thank you, Bubba. This was fantastic. really great conversation. You're a great interviewer, and I appreciate the space and the flow of it. So, evolvedathlete.coach is my website where you can go kind of check out what neurotraining is all about. And some of the other places I show up are, I have a school community. That's SKOOL, school.com/evolved. So you can join that for free. We also have some, subscription-based models where you get a little more access to me and our group training programs for flow states and neurotraining, and my VIP coaching one-on-one stuff. You can find all the information there. You can follow me on Instagram at I am Brandon Day, all one word. And those are my 3 areas where I spend most of my time when I'm not watching little triplets run around and be in flow all the time.
Yeah, that's got to be so much fun. My kids are a little bit older, but my wife has helped me raise children that weren't hers for a long time now. So we're talking about having
Amazing.
another baby in the future, and that's kind of been my luck. We're talking about having one more, so we'll probably end up having 3, right?
Probably.
At a time, right? That would be
Yeah.
our luck. Brandon, absolutely incredible stuff, man. We're putting together some creator conferences, and when we get down into the Southwest, I'm definitely going to look you up and have you jump in with us. So thanks for being part of the Scene Project Sports Network, and can't wait to chat with you again, man. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Bubba.
SPSN